Okay, my view on this subject for 10-15 minutes. I don't think you can actually talk about welfare without talking about tax and vice versa. For me, they're sort of part of the same system. And yet this is precisely what we do. And it sort of reflects the dichotomy that I think hampers the coherence of the tax system and welfare regime. They're both, in my mind, to my mind, very, very hodgepodge schemes. I notice here that the people attending this conference are very, very different, actually, to the people that attended the tax conference. I was on the tax working group. And I think that reflects what I'm on about. The tax conference was dominated by the big end of town. And if you like, I could lay the charge that this conference is dominated by the little end of town. So it's almost as though you're talking across a major divide, and I can't see how you can get a coherent tax and welfare system as long as that is the case. Okay. Tax obviously is about funding revenue for public goods and services, as well as transfers to those who can't sustain themselves. Welfare, on the other hand, is access to those public goods and services and ensuring that people have the means to sustain themselves. But tax actually is more than about just funding. We have corrective taxes, taxes to stop sort of bad behaviour, however you deem it, like getting pissed or whatever. And it's also has a redistributive role. The old Marx thing, you know, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his need. This underlies the essence of progressivity. Sometimes, you know, as an economist, you sit there and say, why the hell do we have a progressive tax system? You know, and you have to sort of think deep as to what it's about. Because you get so sort of mesmerised by the disincentives to work from a progressive tax system that you forget why you've actually got it. And many economists, unfortunately, have long forgotten why we have a progressive tax system. Progressivity. Does New Zealand want to cap the gap between rich and poor and the entrenchment of class? That's the question. And the answer quite obviously is yes. Why else have we had a progressive tax system for all these years? It's the only rationale you can have. So, to that extent at least, welfare is simply negative tax. It's the same system. It too is about capping the rich-poor gap. They're addressing the same issue. Okay. Now, the current plethora of benefits, I just cannot see any coherence in it. And man, I've tried to understand it. It seems to me that it's just the result of a hodgepodge of piecemeal measures, most of them political actually, playing to particular interest groups on the night. And what we've ended up with that, as a result of that, is something pretty incoherent. So I've sort of got a proposal out there that I sort of raised in the tax working group, went down like a cup of cold sick, but it's essentially to simplify the range of benefits, to reduce the cost of administration, compliance, and more importantly, search for people, because only those in the know which benefits to access, which is a real pain in terms of it actually meeting its objective. Integrate it with the tax system, eliminate high marginal tax rates, all in one sort of big kahuna, I called it at the time. So let's just go through that. On the welfare side, it's the same thing that Sue is talking about actually. It's a guaranteed minimum income for everybody. Now there's all sorts of ways you can skin this cat. There's all sorts of, you know, ways you could set the parameters for that. The one I sort of said at the time, and it was just because the arithmetic worked, there was no other reason. I worked this blooming thing out on the back of an Air New Zealand sick bag. Is that, you know, you'd give every adult, say, $10,000 a year, and you have one income tax rate at 25%, so it's basically, on every dollar. So you can think of it as rebated at 25 cents on the dollar, every dollar you earn. So by the time, you have to get to 40,000 income before you pay tax. Everybody sort of do the maths? If you can't, too bad, we're moving on. Now, it doesn't have to be like that. I mean, obviously you could design it quite differently. You could have 8,000 per adult and 2,000 per child. And there's all sorts of qualifying criteria you could use to set this up. I'm trying to just get the point across as to what it's about achieving. You could also have actually additional allowances, but they would be a hell of a lot tighter than the qualifying criteria we have now for each and every benefit. So, you know, quite clearly somebody who's handicapped for whatever reason has got higher expenses than the next person. Well, it doesn't mean to say they can't work, but it's just it's more expensive for them to get to work. So that, you know, you could recognise that as a special allowance. Same with illness, actually. Why you have this difference between accidents and limb and illness escapes me. And you can have, you know, temporary emergency hardship things. So you can, you know, build on it's the base I'm talking about here, which is guaranteed minimum income for everybody.